Are the Marlins buying? Are they selling? Are they doing both? Aram Leighton's in the house to help me digest all of those questions on today's Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins. It's your daily Marlins podcast from me, Peter Pratt. Of course, follow me on Twitter at MiamiMarlins_UK. This is episode 2 on Friday. You've had a double episode on a Friday. That is how much is going on right now with Marlins baseball in general. And I had to get in the former host of Locked On Marlins and just baseball media stud right now. Aram Leighton in the house. How we doing, brother?
Oh, it's great to be back on, man. It's so awesome watching what you're doing with the show. I love all the content you've been churning out, even through the rougher days. You're always an entertaining and bright side of things, especially your 60-second videos never get old. They always end up going a little more than 60, but I'm not complaining. But it's good to be on, my man.
No doubt about that. That's a really good point. Those 60-second rundowns, there hasn't been a 60-second rundown since maybe the first one of them. That's a really good point. They're now like 140-second run. There's too much to get into, right? This Marlins team's just too funny. Too funny. There's so much for us to get into. We haven't spoken directly on the pod anyway since the offseason, I think. I think that's how long ago it was. So much has gone on, but we're in a critical point of the year. And I thought it's perfect time to come back, have a conversation about these Marlins now, specifically in advance of what could be a huge couple of days of action, no doubt. So before we get into that, I just want to get your take on it. You know, I've been living and breathing the fish this year, and I know you're focused a bit broader now. So what's your assessment of these 22 Marlins?
You know, it's funny. As much as I start to cover, you know, the rest of the landscape of baseball, I still can't stay away. You know, I still watch as many games as I can, and I still find myself tuning in just about every single day when I can, and for better and for worse, because it has not been the most enjoyable team to watch this year. In the beginning parts, it was exciting, but obviously a lot of things have gone poorly, and you know, there's still a lot of positives. I think, you know, what we saw from Jazz Chisholm is extremely exciting and encouraging, because going into this year, we were hoping to see that. We weren't sure. John Birdie obviously has been a really, really nice, complimentary piece as well. Joey Wendell, like, there's been a lot of positives. And then, of course, Sandy Alcantara, you know, asserting himself as the best pitcher in baseball. Like, there's a lot of things that are better about the Marlins than they were prior to the season starting. That being said, a lot of the things that we were kind of took for granted or expected to continue to go the way they were didn't. And that's what's really kind of taken this team out. And they're in a unique spot, but I do think that they need to be aggressive at this deadline, not to fully sell, not to fully buy, but to reshuffle, because I think it's a little bit crazy to kind of keep this entire team together and just say, let's keep going, for a myriad of reasons. And I'm expecting them to be busy here, but I think that the Marlins, not even because we're closest in terms of like watching them and watching what they're doing, I think from the entire league standpoint, the Marlins are in one of the most difficult situations in terms of making decisions, not in terms of personnel or anything like that, but just deciding what direction you're going to go. They're in one of the toughest spots. I think the Orioles are the same way too, in a different way, on a more positive angle. You know, what do you do right now? Because that could dictate the next couple years and beyond.
Really could. That's the thing that's been nagging at me with this, you know, as we kind of think about the deadline specifically, which direction do they go? Heard Craig Mish speaking with some of the Fish Stripes guys the other day, and you know, the view was they don't quite know where they're going with this. They haven't made the decision yet, and we're at the 29th of July, heading into a 3-game series against the Mets, having just split against the Reds. Ton of guys on the IL. You know, to me it looks. This team, as it's built, doesn't look like it's ready to contend this year. Even if they kind of have a little hot stretch, like something needs to change with this roster. I think this is an opportunity to do so, but I do feel like their needs are very, very specific, and maybe not. This isn't quite the optimal time to do that. So when you kind of look through that lens, who are the most likely guys when we're shuffling the pack here for the fish? Where's your head at? If you're GMing this whole ship now, who would you be focusing on to kind of move or go and acquire as well, if indeed you can put some names on it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got to look to be trading Jesus Aguilar at this point, and unfortunately, he's not going to bring back a huge return. And I love Jesus Aguilar, whether it's just the way he is on the field or even the few conversations I've had with him, in the clubhouse. He's such a good guy, and but you're not going to bring him back next year.
No.
You also know that you might as well give those ABs to Lewin Diaz or whoever else to really be able to see what you've got with some of your other guys. I'd rather even see them call up Burdick at some point and give him some DH ABs, or mix him in some way, put him in the outfield and put Avi at DH or Soler when he's healthy, whatever it is. Get more ABs to younger guys. I think Aguilar is one of the obvious answers there. If you could move Avi Garcia, of course, I would love to be able to do that, but that might be a little bit more difficult than the Marlins would hope. But I think Eli Sussman at Fish Stripes put out a really good piece about possible scenarios of where the Marlins could kind of swap bad contracts for an area where they need a little bit more. But I think you really got to explore the reliever side of things. As much as the Marlins, could use any bullpen help, I think you've got to look at selling high, maybe on an Anthony Bass, who he's been spectacular this season, but you still don't have a closer. And you don't trust him in the ninth inning. I don't think they're going to trust him in the ninth inning next year either. I think you got to see what you can get for Anthony Bass. I think you got to see what you can get for Stephen Okert and see what you can get for Dylan Floro even. I think those are all guys that you should shop around. But I think the biggest decision, as we all know, is what do you do with Pablo Lopez? And I think where the Marlins are at right now, the only way that they're really going to be able to fill a need, because all of the aforementioned players are just not going to get you anything more than a few mid-level prospects at best. Garrett Cooper is another one that I think could be the only other guy that could get you something that really moves the needle. That's what they really need to be exploring is can you get that package for Garrett Cooper and or Pablo Lopez that's going to satisfy those big-time needs that you have, which we know is center field. They've made no secret about that. We've seen that reported by multiple people now. Marlins are looking for a center fielder. It seems like Pablo Lopez may be their only way of doing so. And maybe Garrett Cooper with a reliever attached could be one other way where they have enough value there to get a legitimate center field prospect. But it seems like Pablo Lopez is their one guy that's really going to be able to get them that kind of player.
It's going to be tough as well, right? I mean, Pablo's been a big part of this club. I know he hasn't, he's had injury troubles clearly, right? And there's been no injury stints for him this year, and he's pitching well, basically a 3 ERA, through July. Started on fire, kind of, had that comebacker, which kind of, I guess, hampered his progress earlier in the year. But he's back now. He's fully back, it feels like. Very interesting timing on that performance, the 11K outing against the Reds, too. Very, very interesting timing on that one. And it did feel there was some sort of vibe going. Maybe it's just because, like, the media members in the clubhouse, they're asking questions. So it kind of, you start to feel that. But everywhere you looked, you're looking going, ooh, that hug with Mel, that looked a little bit longer than normal. That looked a little bit more sensual than normal. And, you start to get this vibe, don't you, that maybe there is something happening here where Pablo's thinking, it's a good chance, actually, I may be moved, maybe.
There was some finality to it, right? Like there was in that hug and just the way, Pablo was kind of walking around the dugout, but it might have just been acknowledging the chance, the possibility that this was even the end with his, Marlins tenure. But, ultimately, I still think it's more likely that they don't trade him than they do. A little bit of that is because neither Castillo nor Montes has been traded yet. And that's that. Those guys are guaranteed going, right? And so negotiations with those guys for those teams is a little bit different than the Marlins, who can ultimately be that annoying guy in fantasy football that says, I don't need to move him. I don't really care anyways. I don't need to move him. If you're not going to meet my asking price, go somewhere else. And the Marlins have that leverage, which is good. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that they have to deal him. Garrett Cooper, who the Marlins are reportedly reluctant to deal as well, I love Cooper, right? And I know that he is one of the few guys that can really swing it in this lineup. But I think the Marlins have to think long and hard, especially if they're not trading Pablo at this deadline and, may explore it in the offseason or may just run it back with him next year. I think all are fair options and totally fine and justifiable. Garrett Cooper I think they got to consider it. I mean, it's very clear that this guy is never going to play 162. I think it's pretty clear that the Marlins can't rely on this guy to stay healthy for obvious reasons. We chalked it up to bad luck, but a lot of it is just, I don't think he's quick enough to really get out of the way of inside pitches or just sometimes in the field. It just seems like he's always kind of just a little bit slower and in harm's way. The Marlins need somebody that can be healthy and available, especially when you have Jazz Chisholm, who's dealt with injuries, especially when you have Brian Anderson, Soler, all of these other dudes that have had the injury history, had the injury bug, Birdie as well. If you can get something legitimate for Cooper, I think you really got to explore that, especially if you're not trading Lopez at this deadline, which I think it's more likely that they don't than they do, because it seems like teams just – Why go meet that exorbitant price if you can go get a Frankie Montas for maybe less and not have to deal with as much haggling?
I'm really with you on this. This Pablo Lopez situation in general, I think you summarized it perfectly. The Marlins sit in that position where they don't have to make a move. They aren't a selling team. And clearly Pablo Lopez can be a big part of the rotation in 23. They can find another way to fill some gaps that they need. However, it's going to be very interesting to see the way the dominoes go. And all of a sudden, does someone go out there and get Montas now in the next day or two? All of a sudden, he's off the board. Castillo goes. Next thing is you're at the deadline and the two main arms, they've already gone. And then all of a sudden, the Marlins are sitting pretty then going,
yeah,
it's your top prospect or this major league dude or nothing. Take it or leave it. And the teams are then thinking, okay, actually, we're in the hunt. We're fully in the hunt, but we need an SP2. It's now or never. Let's pull the trigger. And I think that's going to be interesting, is maybe the timing of this. If you go into the deadline day, in my opinion, Montas, Luis Castillo, and Pablo all available, I'd be shocked if the Marlins do a deal. But I do think if one or two of them have already gone, then that really plays to the fish to really maximize that. If they don't, they can sit back and go, hey, no problem. A lot of Cooper buzz going around about the Dodgers too. That's kind of rumbling around. So I'm very intrigued on that one. Let's do the first ad. Then we want to dig into a little bit more on some of these guys for sure. And maybe this is the perfect ad right now. I think it feels like it. It's LinkedIn and LinkedIn jobs. I mean, it feels perfect. Ooh. There's so much going on. I don't know if this is one that was knocking around for you, Aram, but nevertheless, as you gear up for fall, you need the right people on your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders. The Marlins absolutely need everyone firing on all cylinders. So LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster, maybe more importantly, for free. That would be lovely. So you can create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs. It reaches a network and beyond of the world's largest professional network. It's 810 million people. Boy, oh boy, absolutely wild scenes and wild numbers from LinkedIn. So what have you got to do? You add your job, and then you get the purple hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile. Spread the word you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions makes it easy. You can focus on the right candidates with the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. Small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. So what have you got to do? LinkedIn Jobs, they help you find candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week, nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? You can post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonmlb. That's linkedin.com/lockedonmlb. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Aram, I wanted to just quickly go back talking about Pablo. If a deal is to be done, you had a great article up talking about 5 teams, 5 potential fits. If you listeners that tune in going, hey, I've missed that article, let's bring it to life for them a little bit. There were some names out there, some teams, some fits. I agreed with all of them. However, the one that really intrigued me, the 5th team on the list, the 5th team, I think, is a real ultimate match for the Marlins. And if you can't even remember what team that is, it was the Minnesota Twins, just in case you write too many articles. So the Twins and the Fish, Pablito, the farm system of the Twins is sneaky good. There's some guys there, major league ready, kind of flitting in between the majors. I do think that's a really intriguing one. I'm equally intrigued about the Yankees too. I think the Yankees have some top of the system kind of ammo there that could go and get a deal done for anyone, basically. That includes Soto and Ohtani, to be honest with you. Like, they have the ammo if they want. So just talk us through where your head's at now as the kind of, the days are ticking by. If a deal is to be done, most likely destination in your opinion. And let's not forget, you called out specifically, the trade machine was on fire last year. You had Yimi Garcia nailed on for Brian De La Cruz. It was the trade prediction of all time. So With that being said,
I don't
Aram,
think
that
I'll ever
build
beat
up.
that. I'll never beat that.
No way,
There's
you
just
can't.
no
There's no
way.
way. No, impossible. Impossible. But now, with that being said, Pablo Lopez, if he's traded, he ends up where?
Yeah, that's the funny thing. I think you brought up an excellent point, Peter, that, even I hadn't really even writing this article put too much thought into how the domino effect can impact things too. Is that just continues to play into the Marlins' hands leverage wise, right? Of course, if there's specific prospects you want, and I think the Yankees are a match made in heaven in terms of what they can get, because Everson Pereira is a guy I really like who is going to stick in center field, power bat, already at the AA level. Austin Wells is a catcher who he's got some work to do defensively. There's questions of whether he's going to stick there. I think he's good enough to stick there, especially if we go the robo-ump route. But the bat is so good that the Marlins need as many good bats as they can get, and I really like what he's got there. And then even like an Estevan Florial as a third piece is a guy that you could stick in center tomorrow. I think the Yankees are an easy matchup. But you mentioned the Twins. That's one of my favorite dark horses for a couple reasons. The Twins don't know if Carlos Correa is going to stay with them. So this might be the year that they really have to go, for it and see what happens. And go for it for the Twins is a little different. It's, go get a guy that helps you this year, but would be controllable. So the Twins seem like a better, match for them, where they can get a guy that even if Correa opts out, you feel good that he helped you this year and can help you next year with the 2 years of control that Pablo has. But also the Twins are a great matchup because they have a lot of either big league ready or very close to big league ready pieces. And we know the Marlins aren't in the market for rookie ball players. They're not in the market for lower level players. They're not doing, that's why it bothered me when I saw people saying Marlins fire sale. This isn't going to be a fire sale. This is a restructure. We all know that though. I think everybody listening to you knows that. But the Twins can really provide a package of like Alex Kirilloff, who I really like, has just been banged up and is big league ready and could be a breakout guy if he can stay healthy. Yep. Jose Miranda, who is really heating up at the big league level now and really starting to put together some good ABs, stringing them together, hitting for power, just homered off Corbin Burns. He's not the best defender at third, but you could probably hide him corner outfield or first base as well. Trevor Larnick was one of the better defensive outfielders before going down. Big time power. There's some swing and miss, but even if you could take a flyer on Royce Lewis, it's hard to peg his value. But Royce Lewis, obviously, a really good shortstop. Injuries have held him back. Second ACL tear is concerning, but if the Twins are willing to move off of him, that's a guy, if you can get any couple of those guys in a larger package, that helps the Marlins next year and for the foreseeable future. Doesn't necessarily exactly answer the center field situation, but you could reshuffle and find a way to do that elsewhere.
Still think they can sort the center field out in the future, in the offseason. They have to. I still think they make a deal with the Pirates for Reynolds at some point, and it will be some of these young arms. The Marlins just have so many of them. Pablo Lopez doesn't fill a need for the Pirates. This is the point. Pablo fills a need for many teams, just trying to make it work. Talking about the Twins, though, and a Royce Lewis, package, couple of those guys. Like I was really enticed by that. That's what I mean. It got me the juices flowing in that is a real nice trade partner. There's history too. They did a Romo deal, I believe, with the Twins, if I recall, a few years back. There's some history there. It's all good. I think that could be interesting. The other kind of knock-on effect there, you're talking about Royce Lewis, shortstop. You're talking about a third baseman too, maybe. There's some question marks coming down the pipe here where you've got effectively 4 infielders all in a similar kind of boat here for the Fish. Similar age, similar contract position or control position with Wendell, B.A., Miggy, Coop. All of them have 1 year of control beyond this year. So they're not rentals. That helps to bump your price up. They're all aging. They've all been around the Marlins for a while, apart from Wendell. And he's actually really excelled, I think. It's been a real nice piece. But I think the Marlins do need to shuffle the deck in the infield, to be honest with you. At least one of these guys, in my opinion, needs to go. Just shuffle it up, freshen it up. Of those 4, who is most likely to go at this deadline, perhaps? BA's on the IL, clearly. Wendell's playing. Yep. Coop's on the IL. So, again, that doesn't help. Miggy's around. But it's a tough one, but I don't know if this is the right time to do it. But I do feel like that infield for the Marlins is aging and getting more expensive. Someone needs to go, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think, Aguilar's probably number 1 just because it'll take, kind of a flyer lotto ticket prospect, and he's probably the most likely to go. Garrett Cooper, though, he's not the guy I want to part with the second most is probably the second most likely, because I think teams would have interest in Brian Anderson. He can play third at a high level. He can play corner outfield at a high level. And he's still, by his career numbers, an above average bat. Problem is he just has continued to get hurt. He's now gone down with a shoulder issue multiple times this year. Is a team really going to part with a prospect for him? I don't know. And it's funny when you ask the question, if you were the general manager, what would your approach be? I think you got to sit here and look at this team and say, how many of these infielders would I want on my team in 2024 or even 2023 if we're going to be competing? And I mean, like, starting wise, I think the only guys you can really say that about are Joey Wendell, Jazz Chisholm, and of course, I'd like to have Cooper, but I don't know if you can say that that's a guy you feel really good about being your opening day infielder, first baseman, or whatever it may be, knowing that there's almost no chance that he plays the whole season, and the Marlins don't have the kind of lineup to be able to have a guy going in and out of it that is one of their best hitters. They just can't accommodate that kind of gap in their production. So I think they've really got to explore this Cooper trade, and I think they've really got to see what they have here. And I think he's going to be one of the most likely guys to go, because there's going to be way more interest in a guy like Cooper than a Brian Anderson or some of the other aforementioned names. There's a lot of teams that I think will be willing to give up a pretty darn good prospect or two to go get Garrett Cooper. And, you mentioned the control. He can play first. There's universal DH now. If you, in an absolute pinch, you can throw him in the outfield. He's not the worst out there. It's more about just the health. And, I think there's a lot of teams that'll want him. And the Dodgers have wanted him for 2 years now. So what are the Dodgers willing to give up? I think it's really interesting. I don't think they're getting one of their top prospects, but maybe if the Marlins can package a reliever with that, and maybe even a prospect as well, maybe they can try to make something happen with, a deal for a guy that might be able to play center. James Outman is a perfect fit, though, in a trade for Cooper, prospect that can play center field and is close to big league ready. I think the Marlins could be a good matchup with the Dodgers.
This is feeling all Yimi Garcia, Brian De La Cruz all over again. I can feel it. So we'll see. Final ad, and then we'll wrap up. I've got a couple of other ones for you. Guys, reminder, this episode is brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline, of course. And BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in all your betting needs. You can find your favorite sports and events, number one source for odds, lines, and games. They've got everything covered: MLB, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. Yes, they've got golf. Of course they got golf. What the hell? BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information. You can head to BetOnline today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today or across the weekend. BetOnline, where the game starts. And I wanted to dig into, just to kind of, I guess, take things to another level, I wanted to get into the draft as well. I wanted to get your take on this Marlins draft. I luckily managed to get Eli Sussman on the show last week to help me navigate it, because, as you know, I'm not really a major prospects guy, and I'm definitely not a pre-draft guy either. So I see the names, I hear the buzz. I really don't really know anything apart from that. So Eli came and helped me navigate. But Aram, from your perspective, how did the Marlins do in this draft?
Yeah, I thought they did really, really well with some of the upside arms on the backside. I like the way they approached the going with all of the pitchers the rest of the way. And I know it sounds almost counterintuitive, right? Because we're like, wait, but they don't need pitchers. They know that, but at the same time, they are a team that knows that. I think at this point, acknowledging a weakness, it's developing hitters. Are you more likely to develop a fifth-round pitcher into a stud or a fifth-round hitter? I think it's very clear for the Marlins that they are more likely to develop that fifth-round pitcher, and that's where they're trying to maximize value there. And that's why I'm interested to see, if in the offseason or in other spots they're willing to, kind of trade away some of their pitching, because they did get two guys that I would say, maybe not first-round talent, but top 50 pick talents with Jacob Miller and Carson Milbrandt. And they just signed Milbrandt today for twice the slot value, actually more than twice the slot value, a high school arm with big time upside, electric stuff, and 3 pitches that he can already mix in. Marcus Johnson out of Duke is another one, a 4th-round pick, where if you look at the numbers, not great. But one of my best friends, Mike Rothenberg, was his catcher at Duke University, and also is now in the Tigers org. And I shot him a text immediately. Of course, I said, tell me about Marcus Johnson. Obviously, there's more than meets the eye if the numbers weren't great. He's a 4th-round pick. He said, this guy can really pitch. He's going to find it. Had a little bit of a rough time, and it just kind of piled on him. Makeup off the charts. Great pick in the 4th round. So with the 3 arms they got back to back to back there, I really like those picks. I would have probably gone a different direction than Jacob Berry, if we're going to be honest. But at the end of the day, this is a switch hitter with a track record of hitting in college, plenty of power. But I don't know if I necessarily agree with the notion that guy can play third base. I hope he can. But Brooks Lee probably would have been my pick. But you know what? It's over. It passed. And we got to focus on Jacob Berry. And you know what? The guy is a good hitter, a really good one. The Marlins needed a safe bat. He is a safe bat, but I don't know about the glove.
I think I don't care about the glove anyway. I've already spoken about it. Don't care about the glove. I just love, just love Jacob Barrels. That is it now. He loves barreling baseballs. That's all he wants to do. And he looks ready to play. Like, you look at him. He sat there in the booth with Paul Severino. He looks about 30 years of age. He looks a grown man. He's ready to go. So, I think he's going to be up sooner rather than later, as long as the bat plays. And the reality is with the DH, and this is, to your point around Coop, Lewin Diaz, if the Marlins give him a full run, like, Lewin's going to be locking down first base. Like, there's no need for Cooper to be, in the first base slot at all. He's DH. Your next thing is you got other DH options coming down the pipe anyway. Plus, they labored themselves with Avi Garcia. He may need to be DHing. It all kind of plays into where, can you get some other need via Cooper? And it's painful to do that because Coop's great and he's cheap as well. Like, the money's cheap and he's been a good Marlin. But nevertheless, you got to look at it and go, if the Marlins do believe in Lewin Diaz at first base, well, that shrinks his need there. DH, you've got Soler, you've got Avi Garcia, you've got a few other guys maybe in AAA, plus Jacob Berry coming down the pipe that's going to need that DH role. So wait and see on that one. Just speaking about the corner guys, kind of flitting around here a little bit, but Soler, Avi Garcia, could there be any potential way the Marlins can make a hookup there to get them back to their old friends? Soler to the Bravos. In my opinion, the Bravos do need an outfielder. Also, Avi Garcia back to the Brew Crew. Maybe. Do the Brew Crew need a little shot in the arm? I don't know if that's what Avi Garcia is going to give them, but, old surroundings, familiar surroundings, guys maybe can come alive. Could they maybe even take a flyer on them? Could they make anything happen there?
It's so tough because, if the Marlins were in a different spot, maybe they could attach a prospect, but they're just not in a place where they should do that, of course.
No way.
I think Soler would have been more realistic if he didn't get hurt. The fact that he has an opt-in or, he has a player option for next year, it's got to be a little bit scary for a team, unless they really do believe in Soler. And you talk about the Braves. If the Braves really believe in Soler and they think that, he could be better with them over there, he has that player option for $15 million next year that he'll almost surely opt into unless he goes nuclear over the last 2 months here, which is possible. We saw him go nuclear at the end of the year last year. I just don't see the Marlins eating any money. I don't see the Marlins attaching a prospect. So I'd say Soler is more likely. For Avi, as Eli Sussman pointed out, it's probably going to have to be a bad contract for bad contract swap. And the Brewers just don't really have any bad contracts other than, you could maybe make the case that Christian Yelich's deal is not great at this point, which I hate to say, but I don't know if it's a great contract. Outside of that, they don't have that many bad deals. So, I don't know. I would probably say it's going to be very difficult to do so. But I love your point about the DH situation, which is the Marlins have a lot of guys that can kind of fill that role moving forward. And I think you can feel all right about moving a Garrett Cooper when you're hoping Jacob Berry might be up by the end of next year. You have other guys that you want to audition. You mentioned Lewin Diaz, but Peyton Burdick's been red hot. And every time I think he's maybe going to finally slow down and the hype may die down, he gets hot and he's starting to really swing it as well too. And I think JJ Bleday is a big league bat. I really do. How good of a big league bat is the question, but I think he's a big league bat. So there's a lot of questions they need to answer. And of course, Gerard Encarnacion is somebody that's had a wonderful season, who I would love to see get some run as well. And I think the second half of this year, if they're able to move and kind of get rid of some of that logjam, they'll be able to answer some of those questions going into the offseason and understand a little bit more of what they have. That being said, I think it's going to be very hard to move a guy with a LeBron deal and Jorge Soler and Avi Garcia in his 4 years, $40+ million remaining as well.
That's a tough sell, right? It's a real tough sell. I mean, Yeah, it's going to be a tough one to do. You mentioned Blade. I'm glad you brought him up. And one other final note before we get out of here. We're right on 30 minutes. It's perfect timing. LeBlanc, by all accounts, has been called up. We're recording this before the news is actually official. He's not on the 40-man. We're not quite clear. It sounds like they've got LeBlanc, Neidert, and someone else coming up to the big leagues now. So the AAA guys are rolling in. But finally, LeBlanc's going to get a go, it seems, after playing, all year at AAA. He's been lighting up. Astudillo's been up. Eric Gonzalez been up. Probably Devin Marrero's been up. Everyone's been up. Finally, LeBlanc's in the house. What should we expect from LeBlanc then, if indeed he is called up?
I mean, what an awesome story he's been. And, people are like, oh, he came from nowhere, came out of nowhere to a degree. But, he had a respectable season last year, 768 OPS, 17 homers in AAA. He just wasn't quite getting on base at the clip that he's getting on now. And had some bad batted ball luck. And all of a sudden, he's really putting it all together at AAA this year. 14 homers, on pace to eclipse last year's total, obviously. 302 batting average, 381 on base. He's doing a lot more. He's a more complete player, and he can play multiple positions. Doesn't excel at any specific spot, but he can play corner outfield. He can play second base. He can play third. I think the Marlins could get a interesting, defensively versatile kind of bat here that could be a really good super utility type if it works out. I don't know why the Marlins are so low on him to the point that they didn't want to give him a shot, but they finally did. What I will say though is it's amazing how Marlins fans find a way to just really get latched on to a guy that the Marlins refused to call up. Last year, we know it was Bryson Brigman. This year it's LeBlanc. I'm glad LeBlanc got a chance now. So, Marlins fans can feel at least pretty good about seeing what he can do, but we're at that point in the season, right? Let's see what they can do. And if a guy's hitting 302 with 14 homers and triple that can play multiple positions, let's see what he can do. And I'm glad and I'm hoping that the Marlins will do that. It'll be a lot of contact, which they need, and some sneaky power. I think that's something the Marlins could use pretty badly.
Feels like a perfect mix to me. So I think I'm intrigued. Like you said, it's one of those. It's exactly the same as last year. Just a prospect that we'll latch on to. Hey, where's LeBlanc? And finally, we have the answer. I'm not sure about the corresponding moves yet. We'll wait and see. There must be some DFA action going on. So it's going to be an interesting evening for the Fish. 3-game series. It's Sandy Day. We shouldn't forget that. Sandy going against the Mets. Interesting series as well. Marte back into Lone Depot as well. So tons of storylines going on this weekend, but we're out of time for today. So we will bid you farewell on the second episode on Friday. Aram Leighton joining me on Locked On Marlins. Back to home. Aram is back in his rightful spot on Locked On Marlins. For those that aren't watching and see the graphics to help them, where can they follow you and where can they get all of the content you're pumping out there now, brother?
Of course. Thank you, man. It's at Aram Leighton 8 on Twitter. We also have the 2 podcasts, Just Baseball Show and The Call Up, where I'm talking about, prospects and everything you need to know about the minor league world. And then, of course, justbaseball.com is our website where we'll be covering the deadline in depth. So every move across the league, everything you need to know, prospect returns, all the updates, we got you at justbaseball.com. But Peter, it's always great to be back on. I love what you're doing with the show, man. You're killing it, and it's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Love having you on, mate. Promise me you'll come back after the deadline if there's a serious trade that drops, mate. Let's dig into that one and work out what the Marlins have done. So, guys, thanks for joining me today for the second episode and all week. As you know, it's a daily pod. I am absolutely pumped for next week's pods. It is going to be wild. There may even be 10 episodes next week. It could be that bad. Or the Marlins front office could go cold. And it could be a quiet one. Who knows? We'll wait and see.
Probably.
We'll wait and see. Big news, Aguilar's been traded, and that's it. But we'll wait and see. In the meantime, guys, thanks for joining me on Locked On Marlins and making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day and second listen, hopefully, if you doubled up on these pods. I'll be back on Monday. Thanks again to the GOAT, Aram Leighton. Be back on Monday.